SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit saferwatchapp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. On today's episode, I have the pleasure of having Dr. Leah Kaylor with me. Dr. Leah is recognized as the FBI's expert on sleep and sleep disorders and sleep health, and she just published her new book called If Sleep Were a Drug, and I'm just thrilled to have her on the show today. So, Dr. Kaylor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you here today.
Yeah, me too. So you and I talked offline, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and I saw you on David Dashinger's podcast. I think it's
Yes.
Responder Resilience. And then I reached out to you because, like all first responders, I struggle with sleep. And then I saw the book was coming out, and I bought a copy, and then I've listened to most of it as well. So fascinating.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that most people don't sleep very well at all. It's very rare. And every now and again, I do have someone who comes up to me and tells me they're a good sleeper. And if that is you, I will give you a high five. But most people are very poor sleepers. And yeah, that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, is that there's just so many people struggling. And it looks like a lot of different things too, which is what's so interesting about sleep. It can show up, sleep issues can show up in a lot of different ways.
Okay, so tell me how you got into this field first.
I fully stumbled into this field is exactly what happened, to be fully transparent with you. So I knew that I wanted to do forensics. I had originally started and I did a 6-week shadowing experience at a maximum security all-male prison. And I thought that that was going to be my career. And then turned out it was not going to be sustainable at all. It was far too stressful for me to be in an environment like that day in and day out. Then I had done, kind of switching gears, I had done a lot of sex offender work and then sexually violent predator work. Also, like, very, very interesting, but also didn't feel like it could be an entire career for me. Had done some work in the community with individuals who had been victimized, whether in childhood or in adulthood. Again, very, very fulfilling work, but just didn't feel like it could be a full career. And then kind of finally, like, this Goldilocks moment happened where the FBI was looking for interns. I threw my hat in the ring. I became an FBI intern while I was doing my Ph.D. And then once I completed my doctorate, they offered me a full-time position as a psychologist. And while I was doing my doctorate, your final year is called your residency year. And that is the time where you get to do a bunch of different rotations and try out a bunch of different things and just make sure that you're really well-rounded before you go out into the world and start prescribing and start working under your own license. And that is where I stumbled into the sleep clinic. And I say stumbled because there were a few rotations that I had my heart set on. I was so excited. And then there were just some where they needed to fit into your schedule and someone needed to go there. And since the book has been released, I reached out to my training director to ask her, like, hey, let's set the record straight. Did I actually want this sleep rotation or did I just stumble into it? And she was like, Leah, you just had a spot in your schedule and it worked out. So I'm like, okay, we have figured it out. But again, I could not have been more grateful to have that experience because I knew that people struggled with sleep, obviously enough so for them to have a entire clinic in the VA for sleep issues. But once I got there, just realizing how many people were struggling with sleep, all the different ways that they were struggling, how impactful that is for basically every single aspect of a person's life, because sleep, in my opinion, touches everything. And it was just so eye-opening for me to have that experience. And then immediately afterwards, becoming a full-time psychologist for the Bureau, my supervisor at that time had asked me, okay, Leah, so what's going to be your thing? And I said, well, I'm trained as a trauma psychologist, but even in everyday life, when I'm out at the supermarket or something and someone asks, oh, what do you do? And I say, I'm a psychologist. People are like, oh. Like, I don't want to talk to you, looking the other way. Are you going to write your dissertation on me? No. So I thought, all right, let me switch things up. Let me do this like sneaky psychology foot in the door thing where we just talk about sleep, because everybody can relate to having a crap night's sleep. Whether you have a new baby, you have a pet that needs let out in the middle of the night, you've got chronic pain, you name it, everybody can relate to having a crap night's sleep. And we can talk about it without any stigma, without any issue. It doesn't mean that you have a mental health issue.
Right.
And that's where I wanted to start. And then I thought, okay, after I show people that I'm not that scary, I'm not necessarily going to ask you to lay on my couch and tell me about your childhood, that we can actually get down to probably what I imagine is actually underlying the sleep issue. And oftentimes, especially within the first responder population, it is untreated anxiety, depression, stress, trauma.
Shift
That's
work.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for our listeners, your book is, it's sleep affects everybody and every living thing. And your book is not specifically for first responders, but it is for first responders, right? Because the same principles apply to everyone, correct?
Yeah, I love your question. So I wrote this about a year ago, and because I've spent my entire career in law enforcement, working with first responders, and then, my veterans and my active duty, that this was who I had in mind, because this is who I've spent my whole career with. This is all the examples that I have. This is all the clinical experience that I have. So I wrote it for first responders, and I had asked Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman to write the foreword, and he's like, well, I need to read the book first. And I'm like, obviously, sir, of course. So he reads the book and comes back to me in like 2 days, which this man is an absolute speed reader. And he says, I am so glad that someone is writing this book. Thank you so much. Like, this book needs to be out there in the world. And he says, but Leah, I think that you need to take out every first responder example. I think you need to take out all your references to first responders, because this is a book for everyone. And I said, well, sir, with all due respect, this is who I've spent my whole entire career with. This is who is near and dear to my heart. So this is who the book is written for. But if it goes well, I'm happy to, write another edition and make it more layperson friendly. So I would say sleep is sleep. And everybody sleeps. A lot of people struggle with the same sleep issues. So yes, the examples for, say, for example, the nightmare chapter might be a nightmare that a firefighter might frequently have. However, I think that anybody can pick this book up and read and benefit from it and still take a ton of information away, as long as you can kind of get over the language that I use with regard to examples for first responder specific.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because like you said, sleep affects every being on earth. And then secondly, a nightmare is a nightmare, whether it's generated from your childhood, a bad experience at work that day, or being a first responder military. So yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly.
So in your journey down this path, who would you say most of your audience is at work at the FBI? Is it for agents? Is it for staff? Are you helping with a wellness program there? And or do you apply it to criminals? Is there a correlation between sleep and not sleep and criminal activity or, malicious behavior?
Great question. So within the role that I have, I am a resource for our staff. So I'm a resource for professional staff, for agents, and even for family members and our task force officers. So I am not a resource for criminals or anyone who has been a victim of federal crime. That does not fall within my job description. So I'm only helping the people who are on board. So that would be, professional staff and agents and task force officers really is my primary group that I'm helping. So to answer your question, I do tons and tons of sleep lectures, sleep education, kind of what we're doing right now. And that was the very first presentation that I had done coming on board to the Bureau, like very shortly after onboarding full time. I had done a sleep lecture and it just gained so much popularity and very quickly I became known for being the sleep doctor and then working one-on-one with people to create very customized sleep plans, kind of understanding what it is that they're struggling with and helping them put together all the pieces so they can get to a place where they're having better sleep at night. And then kind of what happened next was taking this out into the community of, okay, you're kind of being hoarded on the inside as far as all the resources are here within the FBI and you're sharing this all within the FBI and this is wonderful. But now we also need to bring this out to the community because more people need to be hearing this. And that's what happened. I would say, again, probably about a year ago, I started going out into the community and lecturing for our state and local partners and for first responders. And while I was at one of those conferences, because like whenever I'm in the Bureau, a lot of our lectures or a lot of my lectures, or I should say conferences that I'm a part of, I normally have a captive audience. So you're going to listen to sleep whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a great gauge of how much people wanted to hear about sleep or not. But when I came out into the community and I was lecturing at conferences, and one conference in particular, I had been a breakout session. So I'm like, okay, this is like the real test. We are going to figure out if people actually want to hear about sleep or not. And I was blown away. Like they gave me the biggest room. It was completely like no chairs available, standing room only. The audience was so interactive. And it was just wonderful to see like, okay, people do care. People are interested. They do want to help themselves. They want to learn how they can get even better sleep. And when I was there, a woman came up to me after the presentation was over and she had asked, my best friend really needs this information, but she's not here today. Do you have a handout? Do you have a website? Do you have a book? There are already books out there on the topic of sleep. And she just planted this seed. And I thought, there are a lot of books out there on sleep, but there aren't any, in my opinion, that are kind of bridging the gap of like, what is sleep? All the cool things that sleep can do if you're doing it right. But like how to actually get better sleep, I think was the piece that was missing. And so that's when I decided to write a book. I'm like, okay, I'm going to plug this massive hole that I see of showing people how to get better sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very comprehensive.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive. I've read a lot on sleep. I've suffered with sleep issues most of my life, to be honest with you. Before we do that, 2 quick rabbit holes.
Okay.
But let's don't stay down there. Number 1, do you do anything with profiling? And what I mean, or is there any type of research with criminal profiling and sleep deprivation? Or is this your next book?
First question, no, I do not do anything with profiling. That is a separate, different department. And then your second question, is there an association between poor sleep and criminal behavior? I'm going to zoom out a little bit more and say that whenever we're not sleeping well, or if we are just not sleeping, we are operating, not that you have been drinking alcohol, but you are operating in a manner that you are impaired to the point where we could equate it with being over the legal limit, especially if you've been awake for over 24 hours. Again, thinking about people who have the lifestyle of a criminal, it's very possible that you are not sleeping well. So I would say when you are functioning at that level of being intoxicated, even though you haven't had any alcohol, your decision-making capacity is going to be poor. Your inhibition is going to be poor. A lot of things that help you think through the consequences is going to be poor. And that is just with sleep deprivation. So if you're also living the lifestyle of a criminal, perhaps you are putting substances or alcohol on top of that. Perhaps you are also in financially dire straits that make you do things that maybe you normally wouldn't. So I would say I can't necessarily point to a specific research article off the top of my head, but I would say that if I'm just thinking about things from a bigger picture, I do think that you could make an association there.
Okay. Yeah, just like I said, just a rabbit hole from a former detective. Just curious if there is any correlation, which I'm sure there is. There probably just hasn't been a study, right? So let's zoom.
And that would be a challenging study to put together, I imagine.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay. So what happens when we don't get enough sleep? Let's just start. That's a big, broad question. So let's say a person gets 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. What danger are they in? What does that deprivation do?
Yeah. So whenever we think about that, and I like to use that example of being drunk because I think that, again, in my audiences, which are normally first responders, people can relate to having had that experience maybe at least once in your life. And when you have had something to drink, so we'll just say for the example of, well, I had said that earlier. So if you're only sleeping 5 to 6 hours, you're not going to be at the level of intoxication over the legal limit, but you are not going to be functioning as your best self. So like we said, decision-making is going to be poor. reaction time is going to be poor. Yeah, being able to think through the consequences, being able to interact with other people, like all the things that you need to do in order to be a successful human being, let alone successful in your position, are going to go downhill. But here's the thing that's really the kicker, I would say, is that, and I talk about this, I couldn't even wait until the first chapter. I talk about this in the introduction of the I'll sleep when I'm dead attitude, of just this cultural thing that we've had going on for quite a long time now. And I think we're like very slowly, at least in the first responder space, like starting to change this. I think more so in the general community, people are starting to catch on to how important sleep is. But I would say we're still moving pretty slow in the first responder community.
Yeah, I would agree.
We've always had this badge of honor of like, you slept 2 hours, well, I slept 1. How do you like me now? Like this kind of attitude. And the problem is, and if we're going back to this like drunk analogy, is that it is not unusual at all for someone to show up to work having slept very poorly, having maybe not slept at all, and yet we ask them to push through. We ask them to keep going. And what the kicker is there is that if you continue to push on, if you ask them to do their shift or to stay even longer, they're only going to continue to get sleepier and sleepier, versus if someone did show up to work drunk, which we would never allow that they would eventually sober up. Like the alcohol is going to metabolize, it's going to move through the body. And so it's just kind of this very interesting piece of what's happening. But yeah, whenever we're not sleeping well, I love this study that's out there. And we seem to think that when we haven't slept very well, and I don't even know if I want to say that, whenever people are consistently sleeping less than what their body needs, which I imagine your audience is adults. So for adults, 7 to 9 hours per night is what we need. So when you're consistently sleeping less than what it is that your body needs, we're having this deficit. We're having a problem. There's a gap there. When we have that, we think that we are performing just fine. Mm-hmm. But the research tells us that if you were to go into a lab and you were to do various different things, maybe cognitive assessments, if you will, that the research would show us, no, you are not doing just fine. You think that you are, but in reality, you're really not. So we have this massive, massive blind spot for thinking that we're doing just fine when in reality, we are not. So that's one piece of it. But I think the next piece, and many people probably fall into this category, is it's not that you're just getting poor sleep one night, but it's probably that you are functioning, quote unquote, or living your day-to-day in this 5 to 6 hour window of getting that much sleep night after night after night. And that's when it becomes quite a problem because, as I mentioned earlier, sleep touches everything. Mm-hmm. Like my supervisor used to say, the 3 pillars of health are sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And in my opinion, now that I look back at that 6 years later, I think, no, sleep is the foundation for literally everything. And then you can build whatever pillars on top of it that you want to. So if you're sleeping poorly, your immune system is not going to be doing very well, which is going to leave you open for infections or viruses. But, people might think, whatever, it's no big deal. Okay, well, it can also leave the door open for cancer as well. That's a problem.
And dementia and Alzheimer's too, right?
Well, and we can go down that road too. So one of my very, very favorite things to talk about whenever I talk about sleep, and like I said, normally I have an audience of people who don't really care about sleep. Like that's normally how it starts. And so what I'll do is I will throw out what is my favorite statistic. And that is every night, if you give your body the amount of sleep that it needs, it does this incredible thing where your brain shrinks up and then you have cerebral spinal fluid coming up from the back of the spine, and it's kind of giving your brain this little brain car wash, and it's getting rid of all the gunk and the junk and the things that are gumming up the works, and it's washing away all these misfolded proteins and just debris that needs to go, and it's getting rid of it as waste. That's a really, really important function that our brain should be doing every night if we give ourselves the opportunity to sleep and to move through the deep sleep, the light sleep, the REM sleep, like this very important function. But if that doesn't happen, and for a lot of us, we aren't getting the amount of sleep that adults need, 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, what is happening is that junk is starting to build up and starting to accumulate. And I like to equate that to Everyone has some type of waste management system, whether you live in an apartment or you live in a house, and you put your trash out on one particular day of the week. They come, they take it away, and you don't think twice about it. But if they didn't come and pick it up, that would be a major problem because we continue to keep making waste and trash. And when it piles up and nothing is done with it, it starts to smell. Maybe we're going to start to attract rodents. We're going to start to have some health complications potentially. And it's the same thing if you can kind of imagine that in your brain is we are not allowing the brain to take out the trash if we're continuing to get this very poor sleep night after night. And as you alluded to, that is, I'm not going to say cause because you need to be very careful about language because there are lots of different dynamic factors whenever it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. However, this is a modifiable risk factor for developing those disorders. Again, we've got genetics, we've got lifestyle, we've got all kinds of different things that come into play. But if you can improve your sleep, that is a risk factor that you can positively modify to be more of a protective factor.
So right there, you just laid out so much. So listener, please download Dr. Kaylor's book, and we'll come back to where they can get that later. But just talk about the stages of sleep. I think in the book you call it CFF, cerebral spinal fluid, CSF. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
cerebral spinal fluid.
That doesn't happen. That happens in one particular phase, right?
It does.
Okay.
It does. So it happens during deep, slow wave sleep. So let's talk about the different stages. Again, unless you already know that you have a sleep disorder, which there might be some people in the audience who are listening that they already know they have a sleep disorder. But otherwise, I'm going to kind of talk about the normal, average, healthy sleeper and how they should be moving through sleep throughout the night. So we're just going to think about someone, maybe they're sitting on the couch or maybe they're laying in bed and their eyes are starting to get very heavy. They're starting to kind of nod off a little bit. That is stage N1. That is very, very light sleep. So we are just kind of gradually falling into the process of sleep. I also like to call this the wave of sleepiness. I think a lot of people can relate to that. You kind of just have this like overwhelming like pressure to sleep. So that's going to be important. We're going to come back to the wave of sleepiness, but right now we're just talking about the normal, average, healthy sleeper. So we've got this wave of sleepiness happening. We're feeling tired, and then we're coming down into N2 sleep, and that is light sleep. So we just talked about light sleep, but we're in a deeper state of light sleep is where we are. And a lot of people ask me, everyone I feel like and their mother has a wearable now, and they're like, oh my gosh, I spend so much time in light sleep throughout the night. Yes, and that is because you should. We are going to cycle through various different stages of sleep throughout the night, but light sleep is still important. And collectively throughout the whole entire night, you're probably going to spend about 50% of your night in light sleep. So for those of you who are really attached to your wearables, don't get wrapped around the axle about it. That is very, very normal. Next, we should be dropping into deep sleep. I'm going to make this very simplistic. When I think about deep sleep, I think about it as being very physically restorative. So we already talked about what's happening in the brain with the cerebral spinal fluid and getting your brain car wash. But some other things that are important are your blood pressure is starting to come down. Your heart rate's coming down. Your muscles are relaxing. And this is very important that this happens because we ask our bodies to work very hard for us all day, every day, and our heart as well. So whenever these things should be happening, like your heart rate coming down, your blood pressure coming down, we should be giving our blood vessels a rest, and we should be giving our heart a little bit of a rest. And that's called nocturnal dipping, because if we are not able to do this, that's when we see people starting to struggle with hypertension. Again, we're not saying cause because there's lots of other lifestyle factors, genetics, diet, exercise, all those different things. But this is a factor that's contributing to that as well, is that the heart should be able to take a rest break. The same thing with all of your organs associated with digestion. This was one of the coolest things that I learned when I was in the sleep clinic, was that if you're not eating too close to bed, which that should be like 2 to 3 hours, give yourself some time to digest. This is the time when all of your organs should get a rest break. Because if you think about our normal day-to-day life, usually we're up, we're drinking coffee, or we've got a latte, or we've got a muffin. And throughout the day, we're just kind of eating and drinking and asking our digestive organs to work really hard, which if you think about our caveman ancestors, they weren't grazing kind of like we are nowadays. Their meals might have been few and far between. So our digestive organs are working very, very hard for us. And because of that, there's a lot of micro wear and tear and damage. So at night, these organs should get an opportunity to rest, to repair, and kind of get raring and ready to go for the next day. Another piece of that too is energy. So I like to think about, for me, when I go to bed, I plug my phone in and I know that when I wake up in the morning, I should have 100% battery so I can do everything that I need to do the next day. And that's the way that I like to think of when I get into my bed. It's kind of like my charger. So that if I'm giving myself enough time in bed, that I will wake up the next day, have energy, feel good, and be able to achieve all the things that I've set out to do that particular day. So in a nutshell, that's what's happening in deep sleep. I also want to be clear that a lot of things that are happening in light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep kind of overlap. They kind of help each other out. It's kind of like a group project, if you will. So it's a lot more nuanced than this, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And then we'll move on to REM sleep. And I think a lot of people have heard about REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement. And it's exactly what it sounds like in the name. That's how you know if someone is in REM sleep, is that you can easily and very creepily watch them. If their eyes are closed, their pupils are darting back and forth under their eyelids. And that is how we know that someone is in REM sleep. One myth is that dreams only happen in REM sleep, and that's not true. Dreams can happen at any point in time, but the most vivid, bizarre, fantastical, memorable dreams happen during REM. And one really cool thing about that is if you were to wake somebody up while you know that they're in REM sleep, is that they can tell you exactly what was going on in the dream and like describe it very vividly, which is very different than if you were to wake someone up during various other stages of sleep. They might say, oh, I was dreaming about rain or something very vague. So that's one of the very interesting, cool pieces. And I think that it's important to highlight that, again, whenever people first come to my lectures and we're kind of just starting out, I kind of talk about whenever we think about sleep for the most part, unless you're very educated on it, we kind of think about sleep as like turning off the light switch and like you're turning off your brain and turning off your body and going into this airplane mode. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because one of the incredible things about at least REM sleep is if we were to put a cap with electrodes on someone who is in REM sleep and we had another person and they were awake and they're problem solving and we put a cap with electrodes on them, their brainwaves would be nearly identical.
Fascinating. That is fascinating.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Like, we need to just appreciate that for a minute. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you that your brain is so busy. And oftentimes, people will sometimes wake up with that like aha moment, or you went to bed and you could not figure out a problem. You didn't have a solution. And then the next morning you do. That's thanks to REM sleep, because it's taking all the knowledge and the information that you have, but then it's also taking innovation and creativity and kind of like almost like borrowing from the dream world, if you will, where kind of there are no rules, and helping you kind of problem solve in a different way that you couldn't necessarily during the daytime. So that's just incredible. And then a few other important things that I want to highlight for REM. Sorry, I know that we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole. But for REM, and this is very, very important for my first responders, important for everybody, but super important for my first responders, is for a normal, average, healthy sleeper, when you go into REM, your noradrenaline, which is basically adrenaline in the brain, should be at nearly zero. And this is the only time during a 24-hour period that it is at nearly zero. And the reason for this is because then the brain can act like this very skilled mental health professional and bring up things that you need to work through that might be painful, that might be triggering, that might be upsetting, things that you need to emotionally process. And again, normal, average, healthy sleeper, when that noradrenaline is very low, we can work through things. We can process, we can have dreams about these things or themes, or like, it doesn't necessarily need to be an exact replay of the dream or the scenario. And that helps us wake up the next day and feel a little bit less heavy, feel like we can continue to move on, not feeling nearly as burdened. But whenever we get to folks who have very stressful occupations and are constantly faced with vicarious trauma, their noradrenaline probably isn't that low, and it has a hard time getting that low. And again, it's because of the unpredictability of the job and things that are constantly being thrown at you, and just having to be incredibly adaptable to this very unpredictable and chaotic environment. And so because of this, one of the things that I often see, whether that's in my veterans, in my active duty, or in my first responders, is people struggling with nightmares. And that's because the brain is trying to do what it needs to do. It's trying to help you process and bring up things that are emotionally upsetting or triggering to help you work through it. But your cortisol and your noradrenaline and your adrenaline are too high. And so you can't work through that the way that you need to. And that's oftentimes where we'll have bad dreams, or we'll wake up from a nightmare and it's just very hard to get back to sleep.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. I don't even know where to start. Just in that few minutes of conversation. So first, before I forget, one of Colin Powell's principles was things always look different in the morning. It's one of his leadership principles. Things always look different in the morning, and I think this is probably why. A good night's sleep, you think about it, your brain processes and defrags itself. Earlier, you were describing if a first responder were to go into a room and be really tested, and find out their deprivation. So a lot of us are operating with operational blindness. We think we're on our A game and we're not.
Yes.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I was putting the book together, someone gave me that statistic and was like, Leah, you have to include this in the book. And I was like, yeah, I sure do. And I now make it very much a point to talk about it, but I still think that there are people who are listening who think, oh, no, that's not me. Like, I'm still functioning so well. And so, again, I really, really challenge you to take this to heart, because this is science. This is us trying our best to show you that, no, you have a blind spot here. You think that you're operating very well, or you think that you're functioning as best you can. And in reality, the research does not tell us that. So I think that people need to take that to heart, because I think that the automatic response is, that's not me.
Right.
Yeah.
Throw in shift work, throw in mandatory overtime, short staffing. And what are the new injectable drugs that people take to lose weight? That also slows down your digestion. So that would be another layer to add on top of this as well, right?
I think that there's so many different pieces that come into play. And I think that that's what's so interesting about it. And that's why I'm also very careful about my language is, I very rarely ever say cause. I'll say associated or linked to. Because yes, there are just so many dynamic factors that are coming into play when we talk about sleep and how we're either sleeping very poorly and all the factors that come into play about that, or the consequences of sleeping very poorly. And, I think that, again, sleep touches everything. And when we're sleeping very poorly, it just has this like incredible ripple effect. But I also don't want to be this fearmonger, because I also want to share that if you improve things and that you're starting to get better sleep, you can also see this ripple effect of improvement across your life too. So, I think that I have a bad habit of focusing on the negative, because oftentimes that's just where my population is of like, I'm trying to tell you why sleep is so important.
Yeah.
But in reality, once you finally get on board of sleep is important, then you can see, oh my gosh, if I just give myself the opportunity to sleep better, look at me. Look at how much I'm improving my relationships, my communication style, being able to think outside the box, my physical performance. Like, there's so many benefits that are just waiting to be had if you sleep better.
If you practice it. So sleep hygiene and sleep routine, is there a difference? What are they? And why are they important?
Yeah. I think sleep hygiene is more of like an umbrella term, if you will. And then I think your sleep routine kind of like would fall under that. But I think whenever it comes to sleep hygiene, yes, this is a big umbrella term that could encompass lots of different things. And I think one misunderstanding that a lot of people have is that it's only things that you do right before bed or in bed. And that's not true at all. It could be all kinds of things that you're doing all day long. And we had kind of mentioned this a little bit before we started recording is caffeine. Caffeine absolutely has the ability to make or break your sleep. And I'm not demonizing it. I'm not telling you can't have caffeine. In fact, it's very, very useful when it comes to our first responders and being able to be on your game or to push through when you need to, because those situations do happen. But when we are having caffeine later and later and later into the evening, then that can absolutely disrupt our sleep and be a piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't put two and two together of how it can be impacting your sleep. So that's just a good example of something that you're doing during the day that can be impacting it. Similarly with the timing of your eating, similarly with the timing of your exercise, similarly with alcohol. Like there are so many pieces that come into play, and it's not just right before sleep or in bed that impact the quality of your rest that night.
Okay, so like the ripples in the pond, isn't caffeine stays in your system, was it 6 hours or 4 hours, or is it longer?
Yeah, so everybody is a special snowflake. So everyone's going to have different metabolism, if you will. There will be some people who are ultra rapid metabolizers, and there will be some people who are poor metabolizers. But we're just going to take like a very general example, and we're going to say the half-life of caffeine is 6 hours. So I have a mug here, and we're going to say that this is 20 ounces because I just want to do some easy math.
Okay.
So we're going to say that I woke up at 6 a.m. and I drank this whole thing. This is 20 ounces. So after 6 hours, and I'm, again, picking 6 hours because that's 4 to 6 hours is the half-life for caffeine. So I'm going to say 6. So after 6 hours, so we're going down to the halfway point for those of you who are just listening, I still have half of what is in this thermos at noon, 6 hours later, still rocking and rolling in my body. Now, the caffeine that you put in here really depends, right? So I'll get to that in a second. So let's continue on. So 6 hours later, 6 p.m., I still have a quarter of whatever was in this thermos, caffeine-wise, rocking and rolling in my system. And that is, again, a very, very simplified example, assuming I just had one of these.
Just one.
Now, just one.
Right.
And it was at 6 a.m. But yeah, like I said, it depends on what I'm drinking in here. A lot of people think that decaf means caffeine-free. No, that is not the same thing. Maybe it's regular coffee. Maybe it's cold brew. Maybe what I actually have in here is an energy drink. Or maybe I'm drinking pre-workout. So there's a lot of different things that could potentially be in here that could be impacting my sleep, again, because of half-life. And again, I made this example very, very simple of I only had one of these and it was at 6 a.m.
Yeah. We'll see you bring up again. So we're going to have to bring you back on the show. So
We will. There's so much to talk about.
So talk about like physical fitness, shift work, and pre-workout. It's a combination for what?
It's so incredibly challenging because whenever we talk about pre-workout, and as I was doing my research to put together this book, obviously, whenever you're a first responder, part of your weapon is your body, right? Like you need to be able to run and to climb and to do all kinds of different activities. You have to be physically fit. So working out is an important piece. Like at least for my agents, like they have special workout time, which is on duty time. And I imagine a lot of other professions have that as well. So that just goes to show how important your physical fitness is. A lot of people are using pre-workout or other types of supplements to really supercharge that workout. Well, with something like a pre-workout and check the labels, everyone is different, but even just a scoop of pre-workout can have the equivalent of like 2 to 3 cups of coffee. So that's pretty incredible. And it's all going to hit you all at once because that's the formulation of it to kind of supercharge your system, get you up and running and hit the gym and really give you a kick in the pants, really is what it's all about. But a piece of it, and you're alluding to this, is, well, when do we actually have time to work out? And, when I was writing the exercise chapter, I have a client, without giving any information away, the only time that he could work out, and he's training for this Ironman, is after work, after taking care of the kids, after answering all the emails. And so his workout ends up being 9, 10, 11 o'clock because he's training for this marathon, this Ironman. And so, whenever we get into later exercise routines, whenever we get into putting pre-workout on top of it, and then people wonder why they have a hard time sleeping, well, the answer is right there. And I get it. It's challenging, right? Like there are only so many hours in the day, and maybe working out is a very big stress reliever for you. There's a lot of different factors that come into it. It's not just as simplistic as saying, stop doing that or, do that first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I get it. It's very challenging, and we have to work with the amount of hours that we have given in a day.
Right. So
yeah.
Great point. And then let's go back to bedtime. Let's say an hour before bed. And I'm also simplifying this, and it's okay to make everything cop-proof because I am one. Our listeners are cops. We keep it simple. Math is great. Simple anything is great for us. So let's say I stop drinking caffeine at noon. Okay.
Great.
All right. And
yes.
then I'm getting sleepy.
Mm-hmm.
So what are a couple things I should do? Put my phone away? Should I watch TV in bed? Temperature? Pajamas? What are a few things?
Yeah. So let's talk about it. So I like free and easy. That's what I like. So one of the first things that I'll tell you to do is as it's getting closer and closer to bedtime, dim the lights in your environment because light and dark are our most powerful cues for letting us know when it's time to be awake and when it's time to be sleepy. So if you think back to our caveman ancestors, they knew when it was time to wake up when the sun went up, and they knew it was time to go to bed when the sun went down. But now we have lights and electricity and screens and all kinds of things that let us know it's still light out. Our brain is kind of interpreting that as the sun. And that's why we hear so much about blue light. Blue light is being so demonized, but we don't talk about what's underneath of that. And so blue light, the reason why it's being demonized is that blue light is the same wavelength as sunlight. So when you have blue light from a screen, from a laptop, from an iPad, from your phone being like super, super close up to your face, the light is coming into your eyes and your brain is registering that as sunlight. So it's confused. It's thinking, well, I thought it's 9 p.m. I think I'm supposed to be sleepy, but then the sunlight is coming into my eyes, so I'm not really sure what to do. And again, light is our strongest cue for when to be awake. So it's like, all right, well, I guess we're going to go with the light then instead of how I'm feeling. So I would say dimming the lights in your environment. So if you don't have dimmer switches, just turn off your overheads and use lamps, candles, things like that. Simple, free, easy. As you mentioned, putting our devices away. I know that that's easier said than done because that's, for a lot of us, how we wind down. So if you are going to use your devices, because again, I'm not going to tell you that you can't do that, but being mindful about how you're engaging with them. Are you sitting and watching TV more passively? Or maybe you're watching something that you've seen over and over again, like an episode of The Office. That is going to be on the continuum of activating, being sitting further away from the television and watching something that you've already seen before. That is going to be less activating compared to maybe having your phone, using it very close to your eyes, and maybe being in a social media debate that's very heated, or playing games, or something that's very activating. And the reason why I'm saying activating is we need to talk a little bit about dopamine, because dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and it's a feel-good neurotransmitter. We like that. The brain likes that. And so when we're doing something that feels good, like scrolling after like funny cat video after funny cat video, the brain is like, oh, I like that. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
Let's do more of that. And that is oftentimes when we lose track of time and we're like, how did it get to be 2 o'clock in the morning again? And I'm still just watching funny cat videos. The answer is dopamine. So I would say just being mindful about how you're interacting with things, but you maybe could replace some of those activities like reading a physical book or listening to an audiobook or maybe a podcast, things where, you don't necessarily have to give up the media, but you're engaging with it in a different way that is more easily put downable, if you will.
Right.
Some other things that we might do would be maybe stretching. I love yoga. That's one of my favorite things to do before bed. So a little bit of yoga, maybe meditation, deep breathing. Again, everybody's got their thing. Something that is, again, pretty simple, free, and easy, and you're probably already doing this, is taking a warm shower or bath before bed. And a lot of people don't realize this, but this is absolutely a sleep hack. So if you do it like an hour, 30 minutes before bed, as weird as it sounds, whenever you get into a warm shower or warm bath, it is going to drop your internal core body temperature. And that is one of the other signals that our body and brain use to know when it's time to go to bed, is that your internal core body temperature should drop 1 to 2 degrees so that you can fall asleep. And then it will fluctuate a little bit throughout the night, and then your temperature will raise back up when it's time for you to wake up. So that's one of the ways that you can kind of biohack your physiology as well. Very cool, very easy. And then I would say, we all have things that need to be done, whether you're getting your gym clothes ready for the next day or you're packing the kids' lunches. You can still do those things, but don't do them like Speedy Gonzales or like, the Tasmanian Devil. What I'd rather see you do is maybe you dim the lights in your environment. Maybe you're listening to some calming music. Maybe you're being very present when you're doing these activities rather than trying to multitask and doing 100 things at once, which is normally what we're typically used to doing. So those would be just a few ideas, I would say, for having a wind down routine, because I don't know at what point in time we decided adults don't need a wind down routine, because if you think about kids, right, we have normally bedtime and then like picking out special pajamas and then picking out a book and getting tucked in and probably reading songs and then one more book and like a special stuffed animal. Like it's this whole procedure that we go through.
Right.
And, as adults, we still need something. We can't just be go crazy 0 to 100 all day like we normally do and then expect to fall face first into bed and fall asleep immediately. And there are some people out there who do that. That's more so a sign of sleep deprivation than anything else. If you're falling asleep immediately, that shouldn't necessarily happen. It should take you a good 10 to 15 minutes to drift off into sleep. A lot of people don't realize that. And so the analogy I like to give is, life kind of happens up here, especially when you're a first responder. Sleep happens way down here. So we kind of need to gracefully land this plane for us to be able to fall asleep and to stay asleep throughout the night rather than doing this crash and burn landing.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I think we could probably do 3 or 4 episodes.
I know. I'm so verbose. I have so much information
I love
to share
it.
with you.
And look, we're in this line of work, we all catastrophize. So I think keeping it real about the effects is something we should do. But so in the last few minutes, as we're winding down, what would be the most important thing you'd want to share as we end this first podcast together?
What I would say is you get one brain, you get one body. Yeah, you'll probably get maybe some replacement parts a little bit here and there. But for the most part, this is all you have, and you need to take really good care of it. And I've just seen so many people who get close to retirement and kind of the wheels fall off. And I don't want to see that for people. I would rather see you learning, making baby steps, and trying to take better care of yourself now, because whenever it comes to sleep, it's not only impacting your physical health, your mental health, your cognitive functioning, but it's also impacting your longevity and your health span. And health span, for those of you who don't know what that term means, is not just how long you live, but how long you live in good health that you can enjoy your life. And when we're sleeping poorly, and again, unfortunately, that's a lot of what the book is about, is this scare tactic of trying to scare you into getting better sleep, is that when we aren't sleeping well and we're not taking good care of ourselves, or we're not using our CPAP for obstructive sleep apnea or whatever the case may be, is that you are setting yourself up for more and more and more risk factors for potentially all kinds of issues very shortly down the road.
Yeah.
And so I would say just take good care of yourself.
Where can our listeners find out more about you and your book?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. It's like Taylor with a K. I am on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. Please friend me over there. My website is also drleahkaylor.com. And I've got some quick hits of sleep knowledge on social media. And then my book is on Amazon. It's paperback, ebook, and then audiobook as well. And then everywhere you can also buy books as well.
Yeah, and it's already a bestseller, right? From what I saw.
It is. Yeah. So it became #1 bestseller in law enforcement, and then also a few days later, sleep medicine. So very exciting stuff.
Excellent. So as we wind down, a lot of what we do, maybe every other episode, is about wellness. So this is a big part of it. And for our listeners, please download her book, buy her book, listen to her book. It will alter your life. I certainly got a lot out of reading the book. I got even more with this personal conversation with you. So I'd love to have you back in the future if that's okay.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Okay. Dr. Leah Kaylor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Sweet dreams.
Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputisheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputisheriffs.org.